Yeah, because I think she's unusual when they start.
Because of time. So, but I want to get that today. We'll catch it next week. Okay, yeah, good. Yeah.
How are you?
Yeah, good, thanks.
What are you doing here tonight? You live anywhere, they live in you.
So that's well, we'll just need to.
Stick my head in, see what's happening.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so I've invited.
Oh, probably a good one. I got support on recommendation.
Busy as you want to be.
Wanted to do there.
I'll let you get back down there.
Looks like I better go.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, Clause 91(4) of the Governance and Meeting Conduct Local Law provides the following. The public meeting is being recorded to improve access to the meeting for our community. The recording will be retained by Council in accordance with the Council's legal obligation, and as a visitor in the public gallery, your presence may be recorded. Thank you for coming today, ladies and gentlemen. I'll just acknowledge our traditional owners. I wish to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which we are meeting. We pay our respects to their elders past, present and emerging, and to the elders of other communities who may not be with us here today. And we'd like to stand for the opening prayer. Almighty God, we humbly ask Thee to bless and guide this council in its deliberations so that we may truly preserve the welfare of the people whom we serve. Amen. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for coming and representing your community here today. All councillors are here and present today, and of course our corporate management team are here as well. We will have an opportunity later on in the agenda towards the end for public question time on certain issues. We do have one question that was given prior to, so I'll read that question first. If you do have a public question and we cannot answer it, we'll put it under review and make sure we get back to you, as it could be a question that we don't know the answer to offhand. So, ladies and gentlemen, I'll conduct the order of business here today, and I'd like to put forward item number 7 is the confirmation of minutes of the previous. I'll have that moved by Councillor Ashley Fitzpatrick and seconded by Councillor Bussell. Are we all in favour of those minutes as a true account? Thank you. The motion is passed. Spoke to our councillors here. They do not have any conflict of interest in any matter arising out of today's agenda. So we'll continue on to reception of petitions, and I'll pass over to Councillor Clark.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I wish to table a petition on behalf of 237 ratepayers opposing the change of logo of the Rural City of Wangaratta. We, the undersigned, acting under Wangaratta Rural City Council Local Law Number 2 of 2016, Division 11 petitions and Rule 78, object to the Council of the Rural City of Wangaratta undertaking change to the present logo of the Rural City of Wangaratta.
Thank you, Councillor. You'll table that position for a report to come back to our July council meeting, which will be on our branding and marketing strategy for our July meeting. Are you happy with that, Councillor Clark?
Thank you.
Thank you. There's no deputations. Oh, sorry. A mover so Councillor Clark will move that one, seconded by Harvey Benton. And all those in favour? The motion is carried. Councillor reports. So officer report, I'll hand over to Executive Service. The adjustment to the August council meeting start time. Thank you, Brendan.
Thank you, Mayor Rees. This report is suggesting that we continue the trial that was carried out in February this year by running another 3 p.m. start time. The view is having a variety of starting times rather than all meetings starting at 6 just provides opportunities for different parts of our communities to attend at different times of the day. So the recommendation of this report is that we change the start time of the August ordinary meeting to 3 p.m.
Thank you, Brendan. Can I have a mover for that, please? Councillor Fuller and Councillor Bussell. Is there any comment from the gallery in relation to that? Thank you. Councillors, anyone like to talk? No, you're okay. I'll put the motion forward. All those in favour? The motion is carried. 12.2, thanks, Brendan.
This report deals with another petition on the matter of the marketing and branding strategy. This petition was actually received prior to the preparation of the agenda and therefore is included in the business papers as opposed to being tabled like Councillor Clark's item. This petition is an online survey or online petition and that can be found online, obviously at change.org. There are 399 individuals who have signed that petition, which reads to save our money, respect our history and keep our logo. The recommendation to council is that they receive it and that it come back to the July meeting of council.
Thank you, Brendan. Can I have somebody move that motion for that petition to be Councillor Fitzpatrick and Councillor Clark? Are there any comments from the gallery on that, for that petition to come back in our July meeting? No, thank you. Any councillors like to talk on that? No? In that case, I'll put the motion forward. All those in favour? The motion is carried. Thank you, Brendan. Sarah, I'll pass it over to you, but we're going to do 13.2 as a first thing, which is the council budget report, and then we'll do the council plan, because we need to have the council budget report adopted before we can continue then to adopt the council plan. So I'll hand it over to Sarah at 13.2. Thanks, Sarah.
Thank you and good evening everyone. So Council Budget Report for 2019-20, this has been out for public consultation since April, and the recommendation will be shown on the screen. Just quickly as a summary of the key changes since the draft budget went out for consultation. So our income projected for next year is changing from 66.071 million with an increase to 67.469 million, so that's a favourable movement. Expenses increasing from 63.139 million to 63.792 million, so 653,000 unfavourable movement, meaning an overall increase to the surplus of 745,000. And capital works moving from 41.32 million in the draft budget to slightly lower 39.69 million in the amended budget. So the recommendation shown on the screen is quite lengthy, but in short, it recommends that Council adopts the 2019-20 budget, notifies in writing each person who made a submission on the decisions and the reasons for that decision, and forwards a copy of the budget to the Minister for Local Government. Lastly, we also note something that we flagged when we went out on the draft budget, which was that there was a lot of movement in the recycling costs due to the international recycling crisis at the moment. So this budget moves the recycling bin charge of $6, an increase of $6 from $7 to $13. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. Could I move a point? Sorry. Public question time on that? No, can I move it?
I'd like to move
Sorry, microphone.
I'd like to move that the recommendation be adopted, and I wish to speak if I get a second.
Yes. Do we have a seconder for that? Councillor Benton? Okay, Councillor Clark.
Councillors, I recommend this budget to you as a budget that has achieved much. I'd like to pass on my thanks to the directors and officers who have listened to councillors and made every endeavour to accommodate our wishes. It is not an easy task given the constraints placed on council with rate capping, and they have done an exceptional job in arriving at a budget that will satisfy us most. The budget includes the biggest capital works program ever undertaken by the rural city, and whilst not everything requested has been included, I think our ratepayers will be pleased with the outcomes over the 2019-2020 year. In my portfolio of sport and recreation, together with the Wangaratta Magpies Football Netball Club, Council have again been successful with a tender to showcase the Ovens and Murray Football Netball Grand Finals. And during this financial year, we will see improved lighting at the WJ Finley Ground, an upgrade of the power supply and lighting for Wangaratta City Soccer Club at South Wangaratta, which will allow for future developments in the long term to cater for all users of the facility for the foreseeable future. During the federal election campaign, we were delighted to receive federal funding of $500,000 to upgrade the North Wangaratta netball facility and place improved lighting on the football oval. Finally, there are big plans ahead to turn the Bar 2 Oval into a major sporting facility with lighting, the largest full-sized oval, and eventually a new pavilion to service the ground. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Clark. Would other councillors like to talk in areas of the budget? Councillor Bussell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As a portfolio holder for tourism and events, it gives me great pleasure to see a budget and a council plan full of initiatives in this area. Wangaratta is fast becoming a mecca for major and marquee events. Last year we hosted the Ovens and Murray Grand Final, a Hitch to the Sticks Festival and a bumper Summer in the Parks program. This year we've got both of those marquee events back, and they'll be even bigger and better this time around. Events that attract more than 3,000 people bring a significant economic impact to the region, but also deliver entertainment for our residents right in our own backyard. As we've seen with the Ovens and Murray Grand Final, once people can see that Wangaratta can successfully host big events, they are keen to come back for more. So I look forward to seeing even more marquee events in Wangaratta in the near future. My ward is the South Ward with great townships like Millwall, Oxley, Cheshunt, Whitfield, Rowley, Moreau, and of course Carwell, where I come from. This year Whitfield has been successful in receiving funding through the Rural Placemaking Program for a township development plan. This will help set up the framework for the future development in this vital township. And that'll be looking at footpaths, drainage, lighting in the 60k zone, doing a plan for that. As a rural councillor, it has also pleased me to see $1.6 million put towards gravel road resheeting. This council has invested more year on year in gravel road resheeting than previous councils, and there's plenty of work still to be done in this area. That's over 60 kilometres a year, approximately, of gravel roads being resheeted. 90,000 tonnes of gravel onto those roads, and approximately 2,800 truckloads of gravel going onto these roads. And when you compare that with 2013, that's 5 times more work being done now than there was in 2013. I think that's impressive. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Benton, did you want to say anything to the budget?
Thanks, yeah. Just I follow on with what Councillor Bussell said in relation to the placemaking, and we are now entering into the 3rd year of the rural placemaking program, and I'm glad to say that there's 510,000 been allocated in this budget. It follows the work that's completed almost, such as the North Wangaratta Sales, the Millwall Court, and the Springers Amenities Block. This year, the funding will go towards the rural township interest signage, the township infrastructure plans for Glenrowan, Whitfield, and the town beautification entrance in North Wangaratta. A significant consultation went into the creation of these projects, with one of the recurring themes being the need for signage at the entrance of our townships. Each of the town has its own unique identity, and this will be reflected in the signs, making them more inviting for the visitors and residents. North Wangaratta is a great way to the Wangaratta, and is its own vibrant active community for council to work with. The town entrance beautification work will ensure that people entering Wangaratta from the north are made feel welcome. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Benton. Any other councillors like to talk? Councillor Fuller.
Thank you, Mayor Rees. Wangaratta is renowned for its arts and culture, and it gives me great pleasure that this budget provides a vision for growth in this area. In the coming 12 months, we'll see the commencement of the Wangaratta Art Gallery feasibility study and the Wangaratta Performing Arts and Convention Centre service feasibility study, which it looks at the expansion of that. Given its 10th birthday in September, it's great to see progress there. These two facilities are the jewels in the crown of our arts and culture scene, and we should always look forward to seeing ways to improve these facilities and the services they offer. Arts and culture are constantly changing, and in order to remain contemporary, we need to be planning for the future in these areas. As the arts and culture portfolio holder, it gives me great pleasure that both of these items are in the being funded through the budget. And I commend the volunteers that form our Arts, Culture and Heritage Advisory Committee as they work on this voluntarily. The stronger these facilities are, the more people that can be reached by arts and culture. I also hold the environment portfolio, and there are 2 items that I'd like to mention. The first is the implementation of a ban on e-waste going into landfill, and this ban will be in place from July 1. The council will help with this process and wipe the fee for the disposal of these waste items, which includes battery items and imported items. And this will cost nothing going through the next year for you. E-waste leaks chemicals into the landfill, causing long-term environmental damage, and it also contains valuable resources that can be recycled, so I encourage everyone to do the right thing and recycle their e-waste for free. Finally, I'd also like to mention the council plans to update its environmental sustainability strategy, and given the nature of our climate emergency we are facing, I'm personally pleased to see the progress in this area. This will set the strategic direction for council actions in relation to the environment, and I look forward to seeing it developed. Final note that I'd like to make is about this badge, and it's not as much about me, but it's about the youth of Wangaratta, and I wish to applaud my colleagues who have supported my request to assist with the funding of the 2020 Rainbow Ball, along with our neighbouring councils Wodonga, Albury and Indigo. I was one of many present this year when the inaugural ball was held, and it was attended by hundreds of young people who were delighted to be acknowledged, but most of all to feel safe and included in their community. For some 20 years, I have felt seemingly silenced by the underlying feeling of disapproval from parts of our community, so it's very warming to see my colleagues support this project, to support the LGBTI community, and to support those young people in our community who feel like they're not welcome to be themselves. So thank you all.
Thank you, Councillor, and well said. Councillor Fitzpatrick.
Thanks, Marys. I also want to say fantastic that we've got the funding for the Rainbow Ball. So as the holder of the portfolio Community Wellbeing, Family, Youth and Disability portfolio, which covers a huge range of services that Council delivers to our community, while much of Council's investment in these areas comes through an ongoing operational investment, there are several new items in this year's budget that I'd like to talk about. So firstly, the money set aside for a mental health and family violence program is something I'm particularly proud of, because it will make the difference to areas that need it most, especially with our young people. So last year I was fortunate to advocate for the increased federal funding in these areas, along with Councillor Dave Fuller and Director of Community Wellbeing Jamie Chubb. And the result of this going to Canberra was $2.7 million investment by the federal government in a grit and resilience program and a headspace outreach program. So these programs are much needed in our community, and I look forward to seeing these implemented over the next coming years. Another project I'd like to also mention is the Mitchell Avenue Children's Garden construction. So the Mitchell Avenue has developed rapidly over the past few years, building from its reputation as the Flying Fox Park to now having the splash park and improved recreation facilities. In addition of the Children's Garden, this will make it the most popular park in Wangaratta if it wasn't already. And this type of project build community wellbeing for our young people, families, and a place to engage in a positive play. So this is a really exciting budget that delivers for our community. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Fitzpatrick. Councillor Curry.
Economic development has been the core focus of this council since we were elected. I'm lucky enough to hold the economic development portfolio and proud to say that this budget being adopted by council tonight continues our investment in the growth of our municipality. We need economic development so that there is a bright, prosperous future for our existing residents, our children, and new residents who will move here in the future. Council invests in economic development through a number of ways. We do it through programs, helping our existing businesses through tourism and marketing campaigns, and through ensuring there is infrastructure and planning in place to accommodate future growth. A key example of this infrastructure is the Crew Street extension, which is ahead of schedule and due to be completed in the next month. This road connects Cicely Avenue straight through to the Northwest Road Corridor, which will be home to more than 1,000 new homes in the future. This is the biggest investment in a road project in the history of the council and is a clear signal to developers that council is investing in growth. Our Aquatics Project is another example of council investment in economic development. Council is building a facility that will serve our residents and attract visitors for surrounding towns, as well as major events from around the state and nation. This year, we'll also see the commencement of the railway precinct, which will create a gateway to Wangaratta and encourage private investment. Council is investing in future growth, and I encourage the community to get on board through this exciting period and change. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Before I hand back to Councillor Clark to see if he'd like to close, as he was the mover of this motion, I'd also like to start by thanking all the community members who took the time to read the draft budget while it was out for consultation, especially those people who made a decision over the period and at our meeting that we had here for draft submissions to come forward. I'd also like to thank the staff and councillors for their time and their effort in preparing all these documents and through this rigorous process that was involved. Preparing a budget can take more than 6 months and involves an extremely long-winded process. The results we have in front of us tonight, that this budget is bold, it provides the funding to make Wangaratta grow. It also provides a strong spread of spending across all types of residents and areas of our municipality. From mental health, as Councillor Fitzpatrick said, with 2.7 million going towards that, and funding for sport and recreation. From our railway precinct in Wangaratta, as Mark said, and this is a budget that supports our community and encourages this future growth over the coming years. That also includes our placemaking program across our rural towns, which was very, very important to this council. This is a budget that supports all of us in one way or another. This is also a budget that shows the power of lobbying and advocacy. The number of grants that council has received this year on projects happening this year is astronomical compared to other years. We have 5.99 million for our Aquatics program, as well as helping to get a low interest loan of 6 million. We have $2.5 million for the railway precinct from the federal government. State government, sorry, yes, I wrote that wrong. 500,000 for the organics processing plant, 596,000 towards the Mitchell Avenue Children's Garden and reserve lighting at the WJ Finlay Oval, and $500,000 for North Wangaratta. And we're still moving forward on lots of other things with North Wangaratta with the shooting range. The funding relieves the burden on ratepayers and allows council to work closely with the community groups to develop these facilities and make them better. Council is investing in growth because we love Wangaratta and we want to see it prosper for the current, most importantly, and for our future generations. Thank you. Councillor Clark, would you like to finish?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In summing up, I thank the councillors for allowing myself and Councillor Curry the opportunity to have some in-depth discussions in respect of the operations budget. This entails some frank discussion with officers, and after 3 long meetings, all our questions were satisfactorily answered. We did drill down the budget figures, and I think we were satisfied that every endeavour had been made to accommodate all the necessary changes. I apologise for not being in attendance when the presentation regarding our commitment to North East tourism was made. There is an amount of $137,500 this financial year to them in our budget. And whilst I did see some television advertising in Melbourne for the King Valley Balloon Festival, all other items are mentioned that are high country. In addition, our budget this year includes $300,000 for mass marketing, $500,000 for direct marketing, and a further $300,000 in capital expenditure in our satellite towns for signage. With these expenses, as well as the employment of a marketing officer, I am beginning to question the value of North East tourism to our city. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Clark. Before I put this to a vote, I'd just like to hand over to Councillor Curry, as you may not see his hand go up in this vote. Okay. So, ladies and gentlemen, we'll put the vote forward. All those in favour of accepting the budget. The motion is carried. Sorry, Councillor Fuller.
Point of order, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to move that we actually have our reports on the budget notes be tabled as minute. Thank you. Somebody.
Great. And Councillor Fuller to move that one, and Councillor Fitzpatrick. Thank you. All those in favour of having those minutes on public display? The motion is carried. Thank you. Sarah, we'll go back to 13.1, the council plan.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. 13.1, council plan 2019 revision. So this is really talks about everything that is behind the budget that's just been adopted. And the recommendation is, as per on the screen, if we're able to scroll down slightly, that council adopts the council plan for 2017 to 21, 2019 revision, and approves that we submit that to the Minister for Local Government. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there any comment from the public? Any questions? No? I'll put the motion forward. So, Councillor Fuller and Councillor Curry. Would any councillors like to talk on this motion? No? All those in favour, I'll put it to the vote. All those in favour of 13.1 progressing, the motion is carried. Jamie, thank you. 14.1, community wellbeing.
Thank you. This report is presented to Council tonight in regards to our Australia Day event and awards policy. So every year Council works with our communities, both within Wangaratta and throughout our rural communities, to deliver a range of Australia Day awards and events. The policy tonight that is put forward to Council is having a look at some of the details of how those awards and events will be rolled out throughout the municipality for the coming year. So the recommendation before Council tonight is that Council formally adopts the 2019-2022 Australia Day event and awards policy.
Thanks, Jamie. Would anybody like to talk in that community on that? No, we're okay. Can I have a mover for that motion then, please? Councillor Bussell and Councillor Clark. Would anybody like to talk on that motion? Councillor Fuller, sorry.
Thank you, Mayor Rees. I'd like to firstly thank the ACAC committee who helped in the process around the drafting with some commentary in that. And I'd also like to acknowledge the strong importance of Australia Day and the awards we put out for our citizens, and encourage everyone to be aware of the timeline so that we can get some really good nominations going into the extended period that we've got this year coming up now. So that's a great opportunity for everyone.
Thanks, Councillor Fuller. No other comments? I'll put the motion to a vote. All those in favour? The motion is carried. Thanks, Jamie, for input to public art policy.
Thanks. This report is around our public art policy. So Council has a variety of public art installations throughout our municipality, and will continue to install these public art as we update some of our infrastructure and roll out some major infrastructure upgrades both within the city of Wangaratta and throughout some of our rural communities. This policy refers to the way in which we would go about engaging with our community, the amount of contribution that Council would make to public art, and also how that kind of public art would be acquired in partnership with our community. So the recommendation before Council tonight is to adopt the revised Rural City of Wangaratta Public Art Policy 2019, and to convene the Rural City of Wangaratta Public Art Acquisitions Committee that would support the delivery of public art projects throughout our municipality.
Thank you, Jamie. Any questions from the gallery? No? Can I have a mover for this, please? Councillor Fuller and Councillor Clark. Would anybody like to talk on this motion? Councillor Fuller, no?
Just another acknowledgement for the ACAC, which have also had a lens across this conversation, and I look forward to seeing what the artistic acquisition committee comes up with, especially in regards to the railway precinct, which is exciting for us.
Thank you, Councillor Fuller. Anybody else? No? We'll put the motion. Sorry, Councillor Curry would like to talk just.
There's a couple of items on the agenda tonight that unfortunately I've been away for a fair bit of time this month with work, and just have not been able to catch up and actually go through all items, and I feel uncomfortable about voting on some things that I don't necessarily know about, so I'll be abstaining from a couple of items on tonight's agenda. Thank you. And speaking loudly.
Thanks, Councillor Curry. So I'll put the motion to the vote. All those in favour of adopting, the motion is carried. you, Jamie. 14.3.
Thank you. This report is in regards to membership of some of our special committees of management. So we regularly have committees of management where their membership is requiring new or re-nominating members to go through the process of being formally endorsed by council. So this report is in reference to the Whitfield Recreation Reserve, Wirralli Public Hall and the Wirralli Memorial Park committees of management. So the recommendation before council is to appoint, and there's a whole heap of dots there, but there is actually some formal nominations there as an attachment for council to these Section 86 special committees of management.
Thank you, Jamie. Any questions from the gallery? No, thank you. Can I have a mover, please, for that? Councillor Bussell and Councillor Fitzpatrick. Would any councillor like to talk on this motion? Councillor Bussell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I want to acknowledge the work that the committee members, these Section 86 committee members do. They look after our council assets and they do a really, really good job. So thank you for people putting their hand up and nominating for them. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Thanks, councillor. No other councillors to talk. I'll put the motion to a vote. Are all those in favour? The motion is carried. 15, Infrastructure Services, Alan Clark. Thank you, Alan.
Thank you, Mayor. This report is presented to Council to consider adopting the Nature Strip landscaping policy. So occasionally we get requests from property owners within Wangaratta to landscape their nature strip, but more frequently we actually get complaints from people about work that has occurred and has put them at some level of risk or concern. So this policy is really putting some guidelines in place, a bit of structure around that, so we've got a standard process to consider these applications and hopefully keep everyone safe in the process and at the same time potentially beautifying some of our urban areas. So the recommendation is on the screen.
Thank you, Alan. Any questions from the gallery? Gallery is very quiet today. It's great. I'll put the motion, someone to move that motion, Councillor Clark and Councillor Benson. Would any councillor like to talk on it? Councillor Bussell.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I read through this policy and I think it's pretty balanced. It does only apply to the urban areas. It doesn't apply outside the urban areas. So I was pretty confident with that. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Thanks, councillor. In that case, you're not voting on this one, councillor? Yes, no problems, thank you. I'll put the motion to a vote. So all those in favour of adopting, the motion is carried. Stephen Swart. Thank you, Stephen.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This item is about the Wangaratta Airport Infrastructure Development Plan. The draft plan is attached to the report and should be read in conjunction with the master plan for the aerodrome adopted by council in 2017. The draft infrastructure development plan takes the general concepts out of that master plan and then attaches and adds technical detail to that. It identifies areas of enhancement and the future development out of the aerodrome, provides more detail about how that could happen, and also provides estimated costs for that. The recommendations on the screen, that's to adopt the infrastructure development plan as an amendment to the master plan.
Thank you, Stephen. Any questions from the gallery on this one? Yes, please, Joe. Would you like to come forward, Joe, and talk into the microphone, or are you happy standing there?
Oh, yes, thank you. Thank you. I'd like to talk from here, please. Thank you.
No problems.
Thank you, Mayor. Does the consultancy with Pitt and Sherry and the plan for land use around the Wangaratta Airport take into account the potential for impacts on surrounding rural agricultural land from spillover effects like has happened around many RAAF bases with spillover effects from contaminants, from firefighting fluids, etc. Consistent with section 14.01 of the Wangaratta Planning Scheme, protection of agricultural land, or, as with the rural living strategy that's being undertaken by council, does it completely neglect section 14.01 of the Wangaratta planning scheme and pretend that protection of agricultural land, as in the scheme, section 14.01, doesn't exist?
Thanks, Joe. Stephen.
Yes, it does take that into account. As part of the process for the master plan identified a number of changes that should be made to the planning scheme to do a range of things. One of them is to, I suppose, safeguard the airport for future development. But the second one is also to put in place a planning scheme amendment process that will go through community consultation, the normal consultation process, and will give anybody an opportunity to voice their opinion or concerns about those changes to the planning scheme.
Thank you. Any other questions from the gallery? Well, ladies and gentlemen, I'll look for a mover on this airport master plan. Sorry, on this airport infrastructure development plan. Councillor Benton and Councillor Bussell. Councillor Benton, would you like to talk?
I endorse it, and I think it's the process that we went, and we had a fairly rocky start to this airport master plan in the start off, and I think it just proves how we can engage with the users of the airport out there, that we seem to have come out in a compatible area of development, and it is going to be something that I was always very worried about with our airport. It was a neglected piece of infrastructure that wasn't being fully used. So I fully endorse the recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other councillor like to talk on this motion? I'll put the motion to a vote. Again, Councillor Curry is abstaining from this one, as he's been overseas and hasn't caught up to plan 100%. He's been back for the last couple of days. So I'll put the motion forward. All those in favour? The motion is carried. Thank you, Brendan. Item 19.1, which includes 17, 18 and 19.
Thank you, Mayor. So this item is asking that Council receives reports of various assemblies of councillors which occurred over the period of May and June, and also notes the minutes of several advisory committees from the same period.
Thanks, Brendan. Any public consultation on that, or sorry, any questions from the gallery on that one? No? In that case, I'll look for a mover of that motion. Councillor Fuller and Councillor Clark. Anybody like to talk? We're okay with that? Councillor Clark.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just make the point that for some reason or other my OAM has been neglected to be put on some of these minutes. And I'd like that rectified.
Thanks, Councillor. Anybody else like to talk? Any other councillor talk on that? All those in favour of this motion? The motion is carried. There's no notices of motion and no urgent business, so I'll come down to public question time now. So, ladies and gentlemen, I'll start the public question time off, and Joe has, I'm just making sure I've got a question there. Joe O'Keefe has written a question there, and I appreciate the question in writing, so thank you, Joe. The question was, please an answer to this question on notice of the June Council meeting. Item 12.1 of the May 2019 agenda included a recommendation from executive staff and alternative option decisions. None of these complied with Council's 5-year strategic plan. None sought to achieve consultation with all of the ratepayers and residents of Wangaratta, as clearly required by the strategic plan. What action have you taken to ensure that options recommended to Council on major expenditure items are made in full compliance with Council's strategic plan And why should ratepayers pay for strategic plan when it is routinely undermined by executive staff and therefore wasted expenditure? So in reply to this question, I just would like to point out some bits and pieces here. At the inception of a new council, an overarching 4-year council plan is developed. In the council plan, we state council's priority for the next 4 years, such as we have the brand identity and marketing strategy is driven directly by 3 of the 11 stated council priorities for the duration of our tenure. We will discover, build and promote our unique identity as a municipality. This will become our selling point. We will facilitate the establishment of new industry and support and recognise the growth of our existing businesses. And we will promote and develop our tourism offerings and grow our visitation rates here in Wangaratta. So this is standard practice that this council's plan is revised on an annual basis as council allocates its funding to its stated priorities. All budget requests from executive staff submitted each year have to be aligned with the council's stated priorities. As an organisation for 2019-2020 funding requests, we prioritised according to the following hierarchy. That number 1, our regulatory compliance OH&S projects, which council is obliged to undertake. Our funding for new projects arising from the council plan is number 2. Number 3 is funding to ensure completion of projects already underway. We need to make sure we've got that money in our budget to complete those projects. Funding of asset renewal, commitments to ensure our infrastructure stays well maintained. Funding for implementation of existing strategies and master plans. And lastly, and only once all above are funded, any remaining funding is allocated to discretionary projects that council believes hold value to the community or for the community. So thank you. Any further questions from the gallery? Please step forward. Might grab that button for you there. If you just state your name.
Good evening, it's John Griffiths from O'Reilly. I just want to clear up an issue that I'd raised earlier in the year. I've been away for about 4 weeks now, so I haven't followed it up. But it was just regard to a bit of misunderstanding, I believe, about the actual number of questions that are allowed. And I did look up the documentation in the council rules, and I believe that's the case, that there are only 2 questions are allowed for the whole of the public meeting. In other words, you can't ask a couple of questions during the actual business and then another couple of questions at the end of the meeting. Would you believe that's the case?
No. My adjudication of it as the Mayor, if you are wanting to ask a question on a specific item in the agenda tonight, you can ask your questions on that agenda at that time. When it comes to general business here tonight, you have which I'm following on from Councillor Clark's lead, is 2 questions, and that could relate to anything.
Well, that seems to me to be at odds with what the statement is written up in the council rules. The council rules are clearly what I just said. Last year, actually, it was interesting you mentioned Ken Clark overruled my questions because I asked a question during the agenda business, and then I tried to ask a couple of questions at the end, but I got overruled.
Yeah. Well, as the Mayor and the controller of the meeting, and if I feel that you had a good third question as well, I would allow leeway to do that as well.
Okay.
So it can control from meeting to meeting.
All right, yes, okay.
But thank you for your question, though.
Sorry?
Thanks for your question.
Yeah, thank you. I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Thanks, John. Any other questions from the gallery? Please, sir.
Can I please make a comment? This is the first time I've come to a meeting and I don't know any of you apart from you and Ken who I've seen in the paper. Could we change the standing orders, the rules, so everybody who's there introduces themselves before every meeting, so anyone else that comes here doesn't know who it is. We don't know who I figured out who the councillors are and the executive. It'd be really handy to know their names and their positions.
Great. I don't mind that. It's a fair, I think we'll talk about that at our session. How do councillors feel about that? Pretty good? Good idea. Well, could you just, so the gallery knows, introduce yourself?
My name's Tony Combies and I live in Waldara.
Does.
Old School Road, where the bridge work's being done and the culverts are being done now, which is good. Council money going to fix drainage.
Thanks, Tony. Any other questions from the gallery? Well, ladies and gentlemen.
Can I just have another one, please?
Yeah, please, Tony. Only two, Tony. Only two. It was a statement, the first one.
So I'm just asking whether the council, after they've completed any major projects like the swimming pool, the work at the railway, do you do a cost-benefit analysis after the project's been done to see if that has met the objectives of the council doing something? And if they do you publish it?
Thanks, Tony, for the question. We've started a relatively new process, driven in part by Councillor Curry, hence his smile. So for each, predominantly we're talking about for capital works items and for things that aren't sort of a maintenance or a renewal aspect, so mainly for new projects. At the start of those projects, as part of the budget bid process, officers are asked to identify what the objective of the project is, why are we doing it, what are we wanting to achieve, and how will we measure whether that's been successful. And then we now do periodic reports back to council, providing some feedback and reporting back as to whether, when those things are due, whether they have in fact met the original objectives and whether those measures have not been achieved. During the upcoming financial year, those reports that I just spoke about will be provided as part of the quarterly finance reports that go to council, and they are and will be publicly available.
That's good.
Good.
Can I just have another supplementary question?
Well, no, this is your second question. There's a statement first.
Is it possible for me to get on the mailing list for the council agendas and that, so I don't have to keep going into the website to do it? Because, you know, where we are now, most people have email addresses. It'd be great if I could just apply it and then see this stuff so I can read it before I come to the next meeting.
The size of the files would limit, from an IT point of view, we've done it for IT thing. You could send a link, but that'd be the best you could do. You wouldn't be able to send it.
Yeah, but you could have an FTP server where once you've got the link, you can just download it, so you don't have to mail it.
Yep. So can we just put that under review and get hold of Tony and make sure we get our IT guys to look into that and make sure we can get that done.
Thank you.
Can I just add, just briefly, if you follow council on Facebook, that's another way to get awareness of when the council takes it.
Okay.
That's something that we can do.
There's a lot of other comments to get through before we got that too. Thanks, Tony. Anne.
Follow on from capital works. For instance, in my industry, when we do large projects, we have to go and inspect the final product to see that it's made to a certain level and that we're comfortable with, that it's met the standards that it's required to do before payment is made. Is that something that council does, or is the invoice paid and then the job is inspected?
Thanks, Anne, for the question. For key capital projects, particularly again, we have in-house project management teams, and individual project managers are assigned to various projects, and they are responsible for checking all of the appropriate documentation and ticking off various things prior to projects commencing. They're also responsible for regular inspections of work during the duration of those projects, and that would include assessing actual physical progress against a progress claim, and indeed assessing whether final payment would be released at completion of the project. Some of our projects also specify a retention amount for a fixed period after completion of the project, so that if any issues or defects arise after completion, we're still retaining some capacity over the contractor to fund any rectification of that.
Thank you. So what was the end result of the splash park default in the filtration system?
So that's, I would describe as a work in progress, and given where we might end up with the contractor, I won't say too much, other than we're getting some designs and costings done on what's required to rectify it, and then we'll consider at that point, once that's finished, about what our capacity is to seek some recovery of that.
Thank you.
Thanks, Anne. So, ladies and gentlemen, before I end tonight's meeting, I'm going to start here with Stephen Swart, leading on from Tony's question just briefly. Could we go around and just, with our corporate staff, just your name and what your corporate director is there too, Stephen, and we'll start there and come around via Ken Clark and around.
I'm Stephen Swart, I'm the Director of Development Services.
I'm Jamie Chubb, the Director of Community Wellbeing.
Councillor Ken Clark, a former mayor.
And your portfolio, Councillor?
Sport and Recreation.
Councillor Harvey Witten, got infrastructure, emergency services and agriculture. And the North Ward.
Councillor Harry Bussell. My portfolio is tourism and events. I'm a councillor for the Southern Ward, which is undoubtedly the most beautiful place in Australia, and it's generally called the Great Southern Land. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Brendan McGrath, Chief Executive Officer.
Councillor Dean Rees, and currently the Mayor, and my portfolio is planning. Thank you.
Mark Curry, Deputy Mayor, representing the Warby Ward. Economic Development.
Councillor Ash Fitzpatrick, and my portfolio is Community Wellbeing, Family, Youth and Disability.
Councillor Dave Fuller, City Ward, and portfolios of Arts, Culture, Heritage and the Environment.
Sarah Brindley, Director of Corporate Services.
And last in line, Alan Clark, Director, Infrastructure Services.
Thanks, and the two ladies across here are our executive assistants, so when you don't talk to us, that's who you'll talk to, and arrange bits and pieces, and we can't do our job without them, those two girls, so thanks to them. So ladies and gentlemen, that draws our meeting to a close. I'd like to thank you for your participation here. Thank you to my fellow councillors and senior staff here. Have a good day, and we'll see you next month. Cheers.